Africa's economy has faced several issues over the last 3 years, on top of the already pressing problems that stifle its entire agricultural value chain.
Africa's economy is on a very slow path to recovery, and that was only due to the pandemic. Added global tension to the mix, and Africa's in dire need to become sustainable.
We spent the last week here at AGRF 2022 to learn about actionable solutions to build resilient food systems and to strengthen the economy. We're joined by His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia and the current chair of AGRF and AGRA. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So now we would need to understand what's changed in the last 1 year. The last year's theme for AGRF was Pathway to Recovery, and this year we have bold actions for resilient food systems. Resilient food system stays in the theme, but what has changed it from pathways to recovery to resilient food systems? Now we have bold actions. Please unpack this theme for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this year is a year that everyone knows we are passing through a number of crises, multiple crises. That includes, when we try to recover from COVID-19, now we are facing a global crisis because of the Ukraine and Russia conflict. And not only in Ukraine and Russia, but when you come to Africa, you'll find a number of conflicts in Eastern Africa and Southern Africa and also in Sahel region. So I think this shows that this exacerbated the need for resilience and food system transformation to be implemented and taken action quickly. Otherwise, the food price has gone up. The three F's, the fuel, fertilizer, and food, the price has gone up because of this problem. So we are trying to recover from the pandemic, but we are also facing this crisis and challenges. So this is a time to act quickly and act expeditiously. So that's why this year's agenda focused on bold action.
Indeed. We do need bold actions to really solve these problems on the continent, especially in the face of how droughts, impending famines are really exacerbating the problem that already exists. If you can tell us a little bit about the focus on water management in Africa at AGRF this time.
Yes, I think because of the water stress, and that is, of course, because of the climate change, and water management, not necessarily only water management, but the ecosystem management, watershed management, which is the source of water itself, is highly needed. So we have to go for regenerative agriculture and water and soil conservation works that's based on rigorous planning for the watershed management, and also looking into the agroecology in different parts of Africa, and then keep the water for those variabilities in rain. You see rain is sometimes coming late and sometimes early onset while the crop is maturing. So these kind of vulnerabilities can be addressed if we properly manage our water. There are some countries who are showing a great stride and forward movement in this regard. And we need all African countries where you see, when you see at a nutshell, the amount of water we get annually is not so much a difficulty because we have that amount. But if you manage it, if you properly conserve it, we can make agriculture to be viable, but otherwise the shocks can disturb the whole thing, and agricultural productivity decline, as well as the post-harvest processes will be in a problem if we don't manage properly. So water management should be at the center of agricultural production, and also the whole food system as a system. So I think, as you raised, with this year's one of the focus was on water management and irrigated agriculture as an entry point.
Absolutely. Water is the gold of our century. Exactly. And securing it, conserving it is critical to so many other sectors of development in Africa. Let us talk a little bit about the finance aspect of this. How are you seeing commitments being made at AGRF? How many people are coming forward with better pledges, more comprehensive approach to tackling these issues?
Yes, I think in this AGRF, something which I have seen is a huge commitment from national governments. You know, our heads of state present in the AGRF and those who also attended virtually has committed to put more money into the agricultural sector. There is, a big understanding that agriculture is the central production system and also sector that brings about the desired transformation in the whole food system in Africa. And that shows that, if the fiscal sources are put in place, then there is a need for matching fund that should come from our donors and also stakeholders that are involved in it, including the philanthropists. So in this regard, we have seen a huge interest to put more money into the agriculture and food systems this time. So it's very much encouraging. Not only governments and development partners, but also private sector. When you see our deal room this time, more than 300 SMEs and 15 African countries involved in it, and 50 companies, big companies, who are involved in both in productivity and production side, as well as outsourcing and the marketing side. So there is a big push from the private sector as well to involve into this opportunity and to bring about the food systems transformation.
The African Union plays a vital role in connecting and directing governments on the continent, along with placing Africa under the correct global spotlight. Up next is a conversation with Josefa Sako, the new Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture, on AU's commitment to building a self-reliant Africa.
Even before the current food crisis, this sector, agriculture, was already into a lot of challenges, such as the conflicts in Africa, climate change issues, pest and disease issues, and now we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the crisis, the Ukraine crisis. All this is amounting to do the food crisis that we are passing. So the reports we are getting from both FAO for the status of nutrition and malnutrition, it's really very worried. So we need to do something. We need to speed up, because Africa has 386 people that are undernourished on the continent. And every year when we take the statistic, we see that there's an increase. There's an increase, so we need to really improve the situation. We need to make sure that all the citizens in this continent have access to food. This is our responsibility as leader, so that is why the image is not very fluorescent. We are not happy, and we are doing a lot. We are really doing a lot, because at a certain moment we are having gains, in this sector, because we are working well. But due to the shocks for the last 5 years, things are really, they are not well, because the pandemic is there. But at the African Union Commission, what are we doing? Being an organization that is responsible for policies and strategy, we have our CADEP biannual review report. So we have our CADEP, the Malabo Declaration. This is a commitment of our head of state to transform agriculture and ensure food security for the continent. So this program was launched in 2014. Up to now, the progress is very low. what are the challenges? Why is it not working? Investment. Because if you look at the Malabo Declaration, head of states, our leaders say that we should invest at least 10% on the sector. Many countries, due to poverty, they cannot do it. So this is number one. Number two, we say that by 2025, we end hunger. Our evaluation, the biennial review report that we submitted to our head of states this year, this edition, the third edition, is telling us only one country is on track, which is Rwanda. But even though the others are making progress, 28 countries are making progress really to reach, the goals of 2025 to end hunger.
The other policies that can be identified that's causing this bottleneck that can be reversed or to be removed altogether to make trade easier and also to bring in Africa continental free trade to help assist the process?
Our policy, the main policy we have up to now is this CADEP policy. The CADEP is the policy we have, but since 2014, and now the situation is different. So last year we were preparing the food summit, the UN food summit. And in the preparation of the food summit, we went again to revisit CADEP. We took CADEP, and we wanted to update this policy. And then we started with NEPAD, with NEPAD, the NEPAD. We started having a dialogue with all the stakeholders so that this policy should not just be a policy that is being formulated at the African Union. We want it to be demand-driven. What are the problems? So we came out with a continental common position on this issue of food system. Because we looked at the food system at the holistic approach, and we came out with this Africa common position. And Africa, our continent, was the only continent, a region, that presented a common position. We say, if we want to improve, this is the way forward. And this is what I came here to, because we are talking about nutrition, we are talking about food system. I presented. So this is what we have to implement, because we are not going to invent the wheel. The wheel exists already. And this document was presented in New York last year, last year, during the summit of Food System Summit. So I think we have the tool. What is lacking? What is lacking is investment.
We are joined by Alvaro Laria, the President-elect for IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Could you tell us why is it that climate finance is in such shortage even today, despite these promises being made since the Paris Agreement? Why is it still coming in such small amounts to Africa? Where does the problem lie? Is it with the global north not being able to accumulate enough? Or is it with Africa that it is not able to attract enough?
Well, I thank you very much, and thank you for having me. So for us at IFAD, climate finance has been there for a very long time. Actually, I would say after the current Ukraine war, what we're seeing is that many of the challenges that were there already are coming to the surface, where it's the food systems, where it's climate financing. Indeed, for us, out of the climate finance we do, which is more than 40% of our portfolio, 90% is adaptation to climate change, and that's fundamental for our smallholders. What we are really looking at right now is that many of these climate shocks, what they're doing is actually bringing our smallholders into poverty. So they are losing their assets, they're losing their biodiversity, and they do not have the means to actually be able to support their livelihoods. In terms of the question you asked me vis-a-vis finance, it's true that we're talking about hundreds of billions. There's big climate funds, the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environmental Facility. The finance, to a certain extent, is there. The institutions are there. I think it's the political will to actually be able to move forward.
Interesting you say that it is political will, so it comes down to also how Africa is trying to create the ecosystem that is conducive of these investments. Certainly. Now in your organization, we were talking about earlier how it has moved after the accreditation that it received. It has moved from just donors to now also engaging the private sector financing for the most vulnerable in Africa. Tell us about that. How is that faring?
So for us at IFAD, we have been an institution that has been lending to the public sector for more than 40 years. However, in the last 3-4 years, we have understood that we need to bring more actors into the picture. And for us, the private sector is fundamental. We have started a new private sector window, and we have been seeing how we can really mainstream it and bring these investments that are actually very much needed. Throughout the value chain, it's fundamental that we bring the big corporations, but we also bring the smallholders and connect the smallholders to the markets and connect them to the big corporations.
What about security for the small-scale farmer? We keep hearing about it, but only 2% of climate adaptation finance is coming from a very small pool as it is to the small-scale farmer, probably less than that. So what about the security of the small-scale farmer? There's so much risk now in the face of climate impact. So what is an organization? How do you look at it? How does IFAD want to strengthen that for the small-scale farmer?
So for us, as you have been mentioned, we have been also working with the African risk capacity in bringing all of these issues from the macro level to actually the micro levels. For us, it's very important how to implement it, how to make sure that these smallholders benefit and are able to secure their future. Obviously, the type of challenge is massive, but we have to start somewhere. So for us, microinsurance as well as dealing with the private sector is some of our priorities in my incoming presidency.
Diversifying crops and maximizing the quantity of food production were also brought to light as means to increase agro-processing abilities in Africa. Sven Holsether, CEO of Yara International, spoke about some of the best solutions.
It's about the way of working, collaborating, focusing on the farmers, and then we can see immediate impacts of this. And I had the opportunity to be together with my team here in Africa yesterday, and when I see small changes to the composition of nutrients, how big an impact that can have on the farmers. Instead of adding 2 nutrients to the field of the farmers as fertilizer, move to 5. Small increase, $30 per hectare. But this farmer, she went from growing 10 bags of maize per hectare to 15 in the first harvest. That's an additional income of $300. It's like 10 times the return on the investment. And how do we scale this, and how do we drive this with force to really make a big difference? And then the food sector here can grow significantly. And then as you increase the productivity, more can be done downstream in processing as well, and developing an even stronger food system and food industry here in Africa. It's a huge business opportunity, but it needs to be grabbed. And maybe this is the moment in time where it's really understood how important local food production is, so that we can move into action.
What's also important, apart from increasing food production, is you touched on it earlier, employment. A big portion of the population that's unemployed right now is youth. How do we get the youth in this value chain?
That's going to be key, both for employment, but I think also for driving the sector forward to utilize technology. And agriculture today is not what agriculture was in the past. It is high tech, and we need the young generation to come in with their competence and to drive the technological revolution. The fourth agricultural revolution will be driven by technology, and this is something that is very important. And I started these conversations actually in my first time at AGRF, when I just started in the year 2015. I had a conversation together with Strive Masayiva, obviously a very successful entrepreneur in the mobile sector, and we talked about how do we bring youth into agriculture. And with the basis of those discussions, we launched an initiative called the Go-Getters to really show that farming and the food industry is something tech-driven, highly specialized, and we need to bring the youth in there. And later on today, we will have the finalists in that competition where we're highlighting the youth, getting them into agriculture. And it's been a huge response in that, and it's really rewarding to see how young people can bring their competence into the sector. We need even more of that, and we need to convey the message that there's a huge business opportunity here. We need young people into agriculture, and we need to drive the technology revolution of agriculture.
Is there skills development missing or needed to help improve on this?
Always, and that goes across the world, that we need to increase the competency level. A lot of the pieces are in place, and today competence and technology and knowledge that was only reserved for huge industrial scale farmers can now be conveyed to smallholder farmers, either through smartphones and even regular phones, to give them that power to every day make the right decisions on hyper-local weather, soil conditions, using satellite imagery to get the specific needs in the field and so on. So a lot of this is available, but then it needs to be utilized, and then we need to also get knowledge across. We're working from Yara with rice farmers in Tanzania, for instance. 100,000 farmers now signed up to get digital, through digital channels, to get competence to increase the rice yields and so on. So a lot is happening, but we need to speed up.
Partnerships are key to a comprehensive approach to fighting hunger in Africa. To elaborate on that, the IKEA Foundation, along with SNV, joined the conversation and shed light on agro-financing for the most vulnerable on the continent.
We deliver projects often very time-bound, unfortunately still at times too boxed in and too linear in their approaches from input, activity and output. And our job and our huge hope is to convene all those different actors, which is indeed very complex, to ensure that we are working more directly towards those longer term outcomes, which require all of us to step out of our boxes and get much, much clearer on the time horizons, and to align around those time horizons, inclusive of, first and foremost, those whose lives we're ultimately touching, and that's those smallholder farmers that you were referring to.
Let's go back to the point of the development banks and the way they are giving out the monies here, and how it is being accessed by the smallest landholding farmer. Tell us a little about that. How are you involved in that regard, and what have you, how have you advocated for the small?
So SMB for years, as I believe Nico, you know, we've been working on what we call results-based financing programs, so stimulating in the main small and medium enterprises to push out their tools, technologies and products to more peripheral parts of the countries where we're working. On the back of them doing that and the technical assistance that we and others provide, there is a payment mechanism that comes in. We're delighted to be on programs such as the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, which is with the Dutch Development Finance Institution, FMO, support from the Dutch government, working to identify businesses, various parts of the world, particularly in least developed countries, that are able to absorb larger forms of financing to engage in climate-friendly activities. An example, soko fresh in Kenya. 50% of horticultural produce in Kenya doesn't make it to market because you can't keep it fresh. Soko Fresh has come up with a really neat, innovative way of preserving that freshness. Another one in Vietnam, shrimp, mangrove, shrimp farming in mangroves. We all know how important mangroves are to the climate, right? So enabling a business over there to absorb larger volumes of financing to farm and then sell shrimp more effectively in a climate-friendly way, more sustainably. Those are great, important initiatives, but where we need to do more is to ensure that there are smaller ticket sizes, so smaller tranches of financing, getting out into even more peripheral, perhaps marginalized, some might say fragile contexts, because again, if we don't reduce the disparities in our world, as they increase, we will have, more violence, more conflict, more displacement, and that's going to continue to affect all of us. So we need aggregator models where we take smaller volumes of financing, we push those out into riskier environments, we aggregate those tranches of financing together, and that's where your bigger development finance institutions and banks come in. Desperately important that we figure out more innovative ways to enable that.
You are right about the disparity and everything else here, but unfortunately in several developing regions of the world, the disparity has only gotten worse, especially over the last 3 years since the pandemic. I'm going to take the last question to you, Nico. You're here at AGRF. Tell us about how are you looking at the deal rooms here? How are you looking at new collaborations? What are the kinds of funds that you're looking to allocate, commit to being here?
We decided 3 years ago to become a serious partner in the AGRF because we believe in their convening power and also in their innovative power to indeed find a matchmaking between youth, entrepreneurs, development partners. The banks are here, the governments are here, and to create a common dialogue space indeed, to really jointly go on a pathway of discovery, to find out what needs to be done. And platforms like this are hugely important for that, and not only at this level, which is an international level, but I would love to see them being replicated even down to national levels, so that the connection between learning on the ground and learning internationally becomes much more lively and interactive, because I see a void there, and that's really something that I would love to advocate for as well, also towards forums like this, is to see it's not just learning here, but learning on the ground and at the middle levels, so that interaction between farmers, scientists, and others really gets to life, so that we can jointly address the whole challenges of what's ahead of us and be ready for 2030 or 2040 in a world without poverty and a sustainable food system.
Sure. Partnerships are key to a comprehensive approach to making the paradigm shift that today's agricultural systems require in Africa, something that also AGRF very strongly stands for.
Finances, food systems, science and innovation.
Challenges, solutions, and the way forward.
These were some of the key conversations highlighted at this year's AGRF Summit.
Until next time, goodbye from Kigali.